Good afternoon. My name's Spencer Brown. I'm recording my introductory video for Module 1 of AEP 855, Educational Leadership. So my current position, I'm a Kansas MTSS and Alignment State Trainer. So what that looks like is I go around to a variety of districts across the state and work with them on making sure, first of all, that their district vision and initiatives are all in alignment, and that they have a focus in the district, and really that focus is on student learning. A big piece of that is ensuring that you have a strong curriculum, assessments, and instruction in every setting, whether that be core or interventions. And specifically, we split up into four specialty areas: behavior, social, emotional learning, reading, math, and early childhood. And I'm on the math team within our larger team. One of the extra responsibilities I currently have is I'm the math lead for our team. So our math team consists of 4 individuals plus 1 early childhood, so a total of 5 individuals. I apologize, actually, we just added 1, so it's 5 individuals plus 1 early childhood, so 6 total individuals. I've also had some extra responsibilities with our team in terms of kind of becoming more of a technology lead for the team and working through some of those facets with people when they have technology issues, as well as looking for innovative ways to streamline some of our pieces that we really try to work with schools with. Outside of my team, I also am an OVT lead in one small district in the state, and then within our trainings, I lead I'm the lead contact for a couple different districts. So who has had the most influence in my life? So I actually chose my wife. My wife's name is Amanda. We've been married now for 8 years, and she came from I shouldn't say a very different family, but she came from a family that just had a little bit of different social norms, a little more introverted, and so through her I've really come to appreciate and really valuing people and making sure that when you meet with people, it's not so much about having a great time, but really investing in learning more about them and helping and really being intentional with your time with individuals. And so I think that that's something that I have really been working on in my personal life for a few years now, and that has a lot to do with her and her parents as well. So the results of my personality test, I agreed mostly, and so my top score was intellect or imagination. I really like thinking outside the box and trying to come up with more innovative and effective ways of doing things, and efficient ways of doing things. And so I agreed with that factor because it was defined as someone who I was looking at the wrong one. Someone who tends to be less traditional or conventional. I like to be, I'm very open to new ideas and experiences. The reason I maybe disagreed a little bit is my second highest score was agreeableness. And I think if you know me well, I can be a fairly disagreeable person. But I think that is because of how they define agreeableness. So for them to define agreeableness as friendly and optimistic rather than critical or aggressive, I'm definitely an optimistic person. I like to think of myself as a friendly person. However, I think a disagreeableness is someone who is willing to maybe be more of a devil's advocate and ask questions rather than just go with the norm. In fact, one of my favorite stories about agreeableness or disagreeableness comes from Malcolm Gladwell, and he had a podcast where he talked about pull the goalie, and talks about in hockey, if you're down 2 goals, you should actually pull the goalie with a lot of time left in the game, and that gives you your best opportunity to win. However, the probability is still that you'll lose by 12 points or something, and you'll just get blown out. So nobody does that because that would be very disagreeable for the fans to watch their team probably lose by a whole lot of goals, even though that is the team's best chance at winning. And so I think being disagreeable is being willing to swim against maybe the social norm and the social setting to really try to get to what's the best um, potential outcome, what's the optimal way of what's the way of giving us the most probability of an optimal outcome, rather than just going with what seems to be agreeable. And so I disagreed with that definition of agreeableness, hence then disagreeing with the score that I got in it. And probably the way that I'm explaining this may be showing exactly why I can tend to be a little disagreeable, which I really value in people as well, if someone can be disagreeable. The two leadership theories that I felt like most closely aligned to me were participative leadership. I really appreciated the idea of really inviting everyone's viewpoint to the decisions. I think as long as everybody's focused on really the core issue, then I think it's really important to get different perspectives. There was an article I read once about how people should be T-shaped, meaning that they have a vast expanse of knowledge in a vast expanse of areas, while going deep in kind of their one area of true expertise. And the reason is, if we only go deep in our own area of expertise, we're only reading like-minded people, we're only looking at like-minded people's opinions, and we're going to have a hard time ever being innovative and branching out from and coming up with conclusions that we may have not already come up with on our own. And so that T shape at the top, that more vast experience and expertise at the top, says, okay, well, how could this maybe seemingly different area, what could I learn from it? So what can I learn from the business sector about the education sector, right? What can I learn from the way private schools are structured when I'm thinking about public schooling? What can I learn from the way Google trains its employees in the way that I work with my teachers, right? And so I really like the idea of participative leadership, someone who just values the different viewpoints, because we come with those different experiences and expertise, and we would be remiss not to utilize that as a leader. I think that a couple of examples of that, one is a previous math lead and colleague of mine. She just did an exceptional job of always reaching across the table and saying, what do you think, what do you think, what do you, I mean, she really pulled people's input in, and we were better for that. And I think in just historical standpoint, I think when you look at, I think what makes a great president is one who has a strong, diversified cabinet, so that we can truly kind of listen to different viewpoints and not rely on one man. I mean, I think that that's the idea of the checks and balances as well in our government. In some ways, is ensuring that we have diversified experiences and expertise making decisions. The other theory that I really liked was the contingency theory. And so the idea that things are not as simple as they seem. I think too often, and a practical example is a colleague of mine told me about a study that said a particular sex was stronger with leadership skills, and that was the statement made. And I'm thinking, man, that's a really broad statement. And what do you mean leadership skills? Because it really depends on the situation and depends on how you're defining a good leader. Unfortunately, I think sometimes what people see as leadership skills are not ways of improving student learning. And so I didn't necessarily disagree with the article, and I actually haven't had a chance to read it yet. But just the idea that I think oftentimes we paint with too broad of a brush. Um, there's a great book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, that talks about how we always just want to put things into a box, and we want to, he says the world is much more coherent than it does make sense, which means that we are just looking to kind of place the puzzle pieces we see in a way that makes sense in our mind so we can kind of put issues to bed and move on. He actually makes the statement at one point that one of the greatest variables to understanding is ignoring our ignorance. Um, and the fewer puzzle pieces we hold, the easier it is to find a place for them. And so we tend to say, okay, here's what a good leader is. There's someone who does X, Y, and Z. When in all reality, there's so many more variables at play, and what's going to take a good leader in this school, in this particular situation, with this staff, may be different than the school over here, right? Even in terms of just pure collective efficacy, we know that a big variable in collective efficacy is mastery experience. And so how does a good leader go into a building that has strong collective efficacy, leverage that, and a building that feels like they've had lots of mastery experiences in their instruction? How you lead that school is very different than if you were going to in a school who maybe is not as optimistic about their past results and they don't feel like they've had those mastery experiences. Um, how I lead that school looks different because I need to create those mastery experiences. So I think there's a ton of variables that go into what makes a good leader. And so understanding the variables and kind of almost approaching it like an economist of saying, well, what are the unintended consequences? What are all the variables at hand? I think is a great leadership style. The individual I thought of actually is one of my superiors who's very strategic in how he approaches each situation. And so he does a nice job of kind of thinking not just at the issue at hand, but what's the ripple effect of this? What could be some unintended consequence of this if our team were to go this direction? And so those are the two leadership styles that I just really valued. And I do think if they do not define my leadership style, then there's certainly factors that I would aspire to in my own leadership. So that's me, and I look forward to getting to know you all more throughout the month. Thanks.